Welcome to another Indie Dev Showcase, highlighting the many indie games we play here on the channel. If you'd like to submit a game for a future video, please reach out. But otherwise, let's begin. For our first game, we turn to Baby Goat Billy. This was a deck building roguelike we played back in 2022. The footage you're seeing is taken from its kind of first week at 1.0, and there could have been some updates onto it since. Our story is that Billy here is searching for a missing family member, and they are going to have to find them in a slew of roguelike dungeons. The deck building comes in with some light RPG elements. As you gain experience from defeating enemies, you'll be able to level up in different kind of deck styles that correspond to the colors that you see in the bottom right. As you level up a kind of style enough, you'll unlock unique bonuses, perhaps even special totems that you can equip, and that will aid you in combat. The persistent element comes in that all the leveling up that you do persists across runs, while you must rebuild your deck when you go back into a dungeon. The deck building, I would say, is on the good side. The enemies offer different strategies. They'll have different strategies from debuffing you, adding blocks, doing multiple kinds of attacks, and it'll be up to you to try and use your best skills in order to do that. With that said, the game, I would say, doesn't really present anything that would be groundbreaking for the deck building roguelike genre, with the exception of having this fully 3D dungeon that you're able to explore. With that said, you still are going to get into required fights, as enemies will be blocking doors, as you saw right there. If you're not tired of a deck building roguelike, I would say that this is a pretty solid game to check out. But if you've already done all the deck building and card playing that you would like to do, then this one is not going to, I think, present anything that's going to change your mind. With that said, I still had some fun with Baby Goat Billy, and I would say that if you do like deck building roguelikes, it's at least worth a check for you. We now turn to Little Ghosts. The footage that you're seeing is taken from the mega demo they put out just before their Kickstarter, but the Kickstarter has succeeded and this full demo is still available. This is a Metroidvania, kind of taking place in this just like, almost like a 90s like collage of all kinds of different media, papers, font styles, and more. When the world is being threatened and in danger of being destroyed, we are going to play as, well, this little ghost who's going to have to figure out what is going on, why are things messed up, and we are going to do a lot of Metroidvaniaing in order to save the day. The key mechanic here is kind of like the hover power from Super Mario Bros. 2 here in the United States. When you jump, you can hit the button and hold it to kind of do this hover. And the hover has a pretty strict window of how long you can do it before you start to fall. As you play, you'll unlock additional abilities, keys, items, and more that you'll be able to use. The music of this game has quite a variety of indie bands, as well as listening to podcasts. And as a special note, while you're not seeing anything too big here, the game does say that this is meant for 17 and up, as a lot of the songs and podcasts can have a little bit of profanity to them. But this is a pretty solid game from what we played of it. We did go through the entire demo on stream over the course of 2 days. The kind of, I guess, mix, almost like not having like a real central aesthetic, kind of gives it its own sense of an aesthetic here. And you'll be kind of surprised with what you see as you go from area to area. Now, one thing that was not in the demo is that there are going to be boss fights, and we did not get a chance to see like how that or how any kind of real combat is going to work, as your ghost here does not really have any offensive capabilities, at least not at the version or the start that we played. But I definitely enjoyed this one. If you're looking for a Metroidvania that has a style all its own, I highly recommend this, and if you are at least a bit curious, again, the demo is going to give you a very solid bang for your, well, free buck, and should give you everything you need to know as to whether or not you're going to enjoy the full game. We now have Refactor. This is a tower defense roguelike, where your main element here is that every round that you survive, you're able to pick from different turns. Those turns are chosen by RNG. And each turn type has a different element, different kind of attack type or radius, and you'll need to figure out the best way of combining them, along with getting randomly chosen kind of floor placements in order to build up your lanes and your various paths in order to deal with the ever-escalating number of enemies. The kind of where the quote-unquote refactor comes in is with the towers you see on the left-hand side. By combining or having certain towers in the field, you can combine them or refactor them into kind of a super tower. And these super towers will come with unique abilities, and they'll also gain some of the base properties of the different elements as well. Now, this is a very interesting game in terms of its design. As you play through and you make progress, you'll unlock additional tower types, as well as additional kind of mini systems that can show up. Now, the challenge is that because both the towers that you get, as well as the kind of floor pieces are randomized, it adds a lot of RNG to the game itself. Because if your enemies get past your towers, you lose out on, well, the money. And you'll need that money in order to keep kind of refreshing your stock to hopefully get the towers that you need. If you see the kind of like B1, C1, D1 in the upper left, towers come in various grades. And in order to get higher quality towers, you need to spend money to kind of upgrade your pool. So the challenge is that you need to balance tower placement, tower upgrading, refactoring towers, with even just being able to upgrade your actual kind of pool of towers. This is definitely not a game I would recommend if you are new to tower defense, roguelikes, and so on. But the concept here I feel is really well done, and there's definitely some interesting gameplay here in terms of combining all these elements. Now, the footage that you are seeing is taken from right around when the game was first released on the Steam. I don't know if they've added in anything new or any kind of balancing done to it, but it's definitely a very interesting take on this design, and one I would recommend that if you are a tower defense fan looking for something different, to at least give this one a check. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at for our showcase. And as always, if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. And now for something a little bit different, we turn to Powered UFO. This is kind of a strange mix of Earthbound meets Undertale with a pinch of, I guess, WarioWare microgames. We play as an alien who one day his alien wife gets kidnapped by a bad guy and destroys and weakens our ship. In order to chase after them, we are going to need to find cats because, as the title implies, our UFO is cat-powered. The progression of this one is a mix of exploring the world, looking for various items and upgrades, fighting enemies in a bunch of very unusual battles, and finding the titular cats that you'll need to power up your UFO to get to additional planets and do some more exploration. This is certainly an interesting game. Now, when we play this one issue that I had was that the screen shaking at some elements or areas were really strong, and I believe the developer did correct that since we played it. But as you play through, it's definitely on the quirky side, and it's one of those games that it's kind of meant for you to break it, as you'll use chicken nuggets in order to unlock additional upgrades, And it's a game where you can't really die, like there really isn't a end or fail state here. But instead, it's one of those games that's just about you exploring a very weird world, getting into weird combat, and just seeing how far this alien-driven, cat-powered rabbit hole will go. And ultimately, I did enjoy this one. Again, if you don't like kind of like traditional RPG combat or that kind of style, this game is probably not going to do it for you. But if you are a fan of RPGs looking for something that is, well, very off the beaten path, then I definitely recommend Powered UFO. We now have Metroplex Zero. Please note that the footage you're seeing here is taken from a pre-release demo that I was able to play with the developer watching me fail through it while we were doing it on stream. And what you see may not represent either the current version of the demo or the current version of the game when it is released in 2023. For this game, we're going with a very advanced take on deck building roguelike. It is a cyberpunk future and you and your team will have to battle robots, rival gangs, and of course evil corporations in order to eke out a win. Where the complexity of this game comes in with is how the different card dynamics and mechanics themselves come into play. Each character will have their own deck made up of different cards and different strategies. You'll be able to unlock and gain new cards as you play, and your characters can also be outfitted with new implants that can change their properties and how they interact with the cards themselves. And one character gains like a camouflage ability that grants them not being able to be targeted by enemies, but they can also come out of it to do more damage or to proc special effects on some of their cards. This is one of those games, much like Refactor mentioned earlier in this video, that I would not recommend this as your first time or your first foray into a deck building roguelike. This game really does assume that you already have experience with many of the other examples, and it can be a tad overwhelming if you are new. But this is one of those games where the card play is certainly on point. I like the variety of strategies, means of upgrading cards, upgrading your characters, and this is one of those titles where the AI will not pull any punches. And you're going to really have to figure out what build you want and the strategies you want to do in order to have any chance of survival. So with Metroplex Zero, when it is released, I definitely recommend it if you are looking for a different and certainly challenging deck building roguelike. And for the last game of this week's showcase, this is Felony Felines. This is a itch.io game that we played, and this is a 2-player local co-op kind of arena shooter. The two brothers here are having to defend themselves from waves and waves of a police department that is trying to take them out. And the only way they're going to survive is to, well, blast them into all kinds of little bits, as you can see here. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the footage that you're watching, we did not have a second person, obviously, for local co-op to play this, so I'm controlling both characters at the same time, and basically just relying on one character to do all the heavy lifting. I did like the fact that the game has that kind of split-screen transition, so it does play really nice. With that said, however, this is still on a pretty simplistic side. There's only a few kinds of enemies, you just have this one environment. This is definitely a good game to play if you're looking for a few minutes to kill with a buddy, but if you're hoping for like a very elaborate and long experience, then Felony Felines is probably not going to be for you. Or if you want to test how well you are at being ambidextrous while doing some arena shooting, definitely give this one a try. But with that said, we're going to wrap up this week's showcase here. I'd like to thank all the developers who submitted games. Again, if you'd like me to play your game for a future video and stream, please reach out. Do the liking, subscribing, belling, commenting, and all that. Be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon link down below and come back 4. Daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the on science of games.